One thing that Joey, Sonder, and I agreed on from the get-go is that we all don't like the look, sterility, or the upkeep of the standard American lawn. Considering that somewhere between 40 to 50 million acres of turf blankets the United States, we realize that we're in a small camp of lawn loathers. One of our goals is to turn as much of the surface area of this land into viable habitat for native insects, including pollinators, birds, wildlife, and of course, ourselves. We started to research some lawn alternatives, and one of the searches that seemed viable was the work that Cornell University had done on a low-mow native lawn alternative orchestrated by Krissy Boys, the natural areas horticulturist at Cornell Botanic Gardens, and her team. So we decided to check it out with Todd Bittner, the director of natural areas for Cornell Botanic Gardens and lecturer in the Department of Horticulture.
So welcome, it's fun to be here. And we're in the Money Wildflower Garden, one of our 3,600 acres of natural areas that we manage and steward on behalf of Cornell University for, I call them the outdoor classrooms for Cornell. So
I didn't actually realize it was that large, 3,600 acres, but it's not all here on the campus.
Yeah, so we have 700 acres here on campus,
right,
including Cascadilla Gorge, Fall Creek Gorge, very well known,
yeah.
BB Lake, but we have the Wildflower Garden. We have actually 13 continuous miles, yeah, of natural areas going up Fall Creek, and 24 off-campus natural areas, old-growth forest, bogs, fens. The idea is have a system of preserves with examples of each of those community types so that they could be used for classes and research accordingly. We have 30 miles of hiking trails, and we're the front door of Cornell University.
It's part of the reason that really drew me to this campus. It was just so beautiful. When I first walked here when I was 13 years old, I was like, I'm coming here. It's so beautiful, and like you and your team are part of what makes it amazing.
Yeah.
And keeps it amazing and keeps it so diverse.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, we also have botanic gardens, wonderful education programs,
yeah,
the F.R. Newman Arboretum. So
the Welcome Center wasn't really here when I was here, but it has the green roof and everything. It's stellar. You know, I know just right around the corner is, and I didn't know about this, but when I was chatting with you, the alternative lawn, which are the native lawn actually. And that's something that was really on our mind because we were looking for alternatives to turf,
right,
you know, really, and we'd love to go see it and hear because it was a big trial for you guys, right?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's turned out really well. We've been really happy with it, and you know, the idea behind it is that native lawn or traditional lawns are completely I call them drug dependent because
sterile in a way. Yeah.
You have nitrogen and phosphorus inputs. You water them. You know, you have carbon emissions from mowing them, and you know that runoff pollutes the water. We have harmful algal blooms in our region, and you know we really wanted to come up with other ways that we can support biodiversity, have really attractive, useful, plant communities that are a substitute for the traditional lawn.
It's so funny that you say it's drug-induced because I think a lot of people, and a lot of people think that lawn is like low maintenance, right? And what's funny about it is like one of our neighbors came over and we want to put in this meadow, and he goes, oh my God, so much work. And I was like, look, you mow your lawn, 2 people mow his own lawn once a week for 4 to 5 hours a day. And I'm like, I think that is a lot of maintenance.
Yes, yes.
So.
Well, and you know, people compare it to a desert in terms of its biodiversity. I say, well, that's a disservice to deserts that are really ecologically diverse.
Exactly.
It's more like a parking lot. So we're really keen on all the, particularly the insects that pollinators are a big thing nowadays because of the insect apocalypse. And you know, the biodiversity that's supported to have that rich insect communities are directly related to the biodiversity of the plant community.
Right, and I know we talk about pollinators, right? But it's also other insects too that are probably help with the bird life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a lot of the insects have a specific host plants that they feed on, the larvae feed on, and that they oviposit their eggs on. And so you don't have those species if you don't have those plants.
And when did this lawn go in? Because I wasn't aware of it when I was here at school, but I'm vintage now.
So we started it in 2009.
Okay.
And we did it in increments. So it's about a 5-year project, doing little pieces of it over time. So it has had quite a bit of time to develop, and we'll show you that here in a minute. But first, there's the control, which is the turf lawn. And one of my favorite mentors that I had when I was going to school would ask, "Where are you standing?" And we were in Morton Arboretum in Illinois, and I was DuPage County, Morton Arboretum, Illinois. No.
GPS down that lawn.
And he's saying, "Nope, you're in Eurasia. Look at the landscape that you're standing in, and everything here is from Europe and Asia." And then there was a prairie restoration next to us, and we stepped over to the prairie restoration, and he asked, "Now where are you standing?" "You're standing in Illinois."
Yeah.
And so here, this is our native lawn. Now we're standing in New York.
Right.
And we do have a tolerance for some of the non-native Eurasian species that do spontaneously grow in here.
Do they bully the others though?
The thing
that's always the difference.
The equation is really about plant competition, favoring the native plants, giving them as many advantages as possible over the non-native plants.
How do you make an advantage? How do you one up the native?
So, well, first of all, it's always important to have a model community that you're thinking of.
Right.
It's like, what are you driving towards? And we identified two that we kind of used as that model. One was an Alvar plant community up in the Ontario Lake Plain that had the material from the glacial outwash scoured away down to bedrock. And you have this really unique assemblage of plants that are highly drought tolerant, and we're growing in this area, and we're like, hey, those things could grow in a dry condition. And that is part of what we wanted to have here, because we didn't want to have to water it. We're going to have drought adapted species.
Right.
So we kind of made that connection. Then we had another one, which was, where are these plants, some of these plants growing in another kind of similar habitat where they're being mowed periodically in somewhat of an artificial condition, but that might replicate tree gaps, canopy gaps in a forest system. And power line right-of-ways through forests were that other model. And we found two plants in common among those areas, and they're some of these small grasses, Danthonia spicata and Danthonia compressa. And those
the
form
poverty oat grass
the poverty oat grass, and those form the matrix that you need as when you look at plant communities, you have to have dominant species,
right?
And those are the dominant species. So here we have this very low growing grass here, and right now we held off on mowing it because we like to collect the seeds to make more, but it is about at the height.
You're gonna see me collecting this for our lawn. Todd will be like, "Where did all the seed heads go?" Like they'll be pouring out of my pockets, like Shawshank Redemption style.
Exactly. So, this is about the height that we're hoping to accomplish at this time of the year, and we want to be able to collect the seeds, so we have held off on mowing it. But you see how dense the Danthonia is. It's the majority of what it is that we're seeing.
Now, is it a clump former or is it rhizomatous?
It is a clump former,
but it's clumped out quite a lot.
Exactly. Well, that's how well it's doing in here. Now, I do need to take a step back because we did do some site preparation here to make the site more conducive to these drought tolerant
Meaning you killed
species.
everything off.
Well, so we started with putting a black tarp over the entire
so you solarized
area,
it.
and we solarized it. And that was to help get rid of the seed bank, plus the as a more environmentally responsible way of getting rid of the perennial components that were already present, the annuals and so on, of the traditional lawn. So then we brought in a bunch of sand because we wanted to make it more well-drained for the soil, to make it more drought appropriate, which is why when I heard about your converted nursery with all the gravel, it made me think that this might be a good comparable habitat.
Yeah.
So, normally in a restoration, in a true restoration, you wouldn't be doing the soil augmentation, but this is a little bit more of a demonstration, and so we thought that would be appropriate. So that made it, that was kind of one of the prerequisites for this, and that allows these drought-adapted species to do a lot, to do their thing.
Yeah.
So
I just want to point out that butterfly right over there. I'm just like, you know,
the fritillary, yes.
The fritillary and the orange one. And
yes.
It's just like hanging out, you know. Just have to point it out just
right.
because.
Mission accomplished,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Just proof is there.
Yeah, so we have a few other bunch grasses that are in here. We have little blue stem, which I know that, you know, would grow well in your site. And we have another one that is fairly...
And that gets actually really purple, beautiful purple flower head.
Oh, it has such a nice russet color in the fall.
Yeah.
It's really attractive. It's used ornamentally as well.
Yeah, because that we might let... I love letting grasses flower. And actually, we had some interesting grasses, and they're really hard for me to key out. I have to say, I'm not like a grass nerd. I'd love, you know, maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody else who could be like, that's this grass over
Yes, yes.
But we had about 12 different grasses, but like 9 of them were non-native. So I was just like, oh man, you know, they look nice, but I'm just like, man, I didn't realize that I was in Eurasia the whole time.
Yes. Well, you know, the thing is, it's really about which ones have an impact, which ones are really negative.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do have non-native species that are in here. We have a black medic, we have white clover that's in here as well. So, you know, if you're doing this, you have to have some tolerance for the things that don't belong.
Right. But when I think of clovers too, I think of like bees love it. You know, the white clover, it's short, you know, but we do have native clovers too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so
yes.
I guess, you know, but.
So then, you know, we've been talking about some of these dominant grasses, but then we have the others that are kind of grass-like. And Juncus pathrush is one of those right here. And I think this one would do very well in your...
We actually have some of this.
The thing is, it likes to grow in lots of different places. It tolerates disturbance. It's called path rush because you see it along paths where there's foot traffic and so on. So that one is happy where we are here. I also see the anemone here.
Oh, yeah, but that's not native, is it?
No, that's our native wood anemone.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Wow, amazing.
So, and we put that in here. There have been, I'd say about 80% of the things that we planted persisted here. And we do have a few things that have become spontaneous, both in terms of native plants coming in from the adjoining areas and non-native lawn species as well. But we have the white wood aster that's in here, and it's spontaneously growing. We have...
And that is native, the white wood aster,
It is,
so,
yep.
Yeah.
And
it's neat red stems. I actually never really noticed. This is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the thing is, it just is going to be more diminutive because we mow it, you know, once or twice a year.
Does it ever go to flower?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
So when do you strategically mow your...
So it really is about, for this mowing, it really is about what you want as a landowner. And the plants, the native plants mostly can adapt as long as it is infrequent. So if you think about ecologically, a lot of these species have co-adapted with grazing for a very long time. And this is just another, you know, mimic of grazing. As long as and we always mow it really high. So when we're in here, it's about 6-8 inches high. We're not mowing it like you would a turf lawn.
Yeah.
That would be very damaging.
I mean, this to me is like, is a reasonable height even. Like I don't mind this. And I know you didn't even mow it. You know, you didn't mow it for us or to go to seed yet or whatever the reason might be. So.
Yeah. So we have a few other things in here that are very happy. We have pussy toes, which is something that I know would grow very well on your rocky areas.
On the gravel, because I was thinking, because we have an area that has, it's 24% clay, silty loam, but it has a hard compaction layer, so the water doesn't always get through in the regular lawn. But the gravel area, these I think would do extremely well.
So we also put some whimsy in here, and you just have to be careful. But it is native to New York.
Yeah.
So,
oh, there's another one. It's about to flower too.
Yes. Even though we tell people to walk on it, you do have to watch where you're going because we we put a few surprises in here.
Oh, and you have some penstemon too,
yeah,
right?
so that right now is a favorite for a lot of the pollinators.
The bumblebees can't get enough of it.
Yeah, so it's doing really, really well in here. So that's a great one.
But that could get quite tall though, right?
It can, but the thing is, if you mow it a couple times, it'll still flower at just a more diminutive height. Plus, recall that we made this area more droughty, so things are going to be a little bit shorter as a result.
Is this the medic, or is this
yes.
Okay, and but it's a nitrogen fixer though,
it is,
right?
It is. Which is not really what we would want. So I'd say of all the things that are happening in here, that one is probably the most concerning development, because it is making the area more fertile, and what we're really wanting is the infertile conditions that then keep plants growing at a shorter stature.
And that is so counterintuitive, because whenever you think about, people growing plants, like they always want that nice, like friable, silty, loamy, fertile thing, because they're oftentimes growing vegetables or flowers or something like this. But in meadows and like these native lawns, you want something that is like poverty oatgrass.
Yes.
You want something that is impoverished away in the soil. Which is strange.
Exactly. And if you think about a lot of the agricultural weeds that we have grow in those really fertile conditions. So if you have fertile conditions, you're going to have a lot of weeds.
Amazing. Yes. So you wouldn't want to really select for nitrogen fixers. But then there's clovers, right, as well? So,
but they're not really a significant part of the plant communities that we have around here.
So you picked, when you were making this, was it like, were you trying to figure out like, oh, I want to do 80% grasses and then 20%, like what was the cake mix that you were doing?
Well, again, the cake mix kind of came from those reference sites that we had, and what would really work well in those conditions. And what was growing as co-associates of the Danthonia and some of these sedges as well that we have in here. We haven't really talked about, but we have about 6 different sedges that are growing in here in this kind of tight matrix.
Can you point out some more of those? Because I am fascinated, because we do have a lot of sedges, and actually out of the sedges, I think they were all native when I was like keying them out.
So it is a little challenging at the time to be able to do that, just because they don't all have fruits on them.
Right.
But I could point out some of them in here, and the thing is that they all have these triangular stems. So even if you can't identify it down to the particular species, you see how it has a triangular arrangement.
The sedges have edges.
And they're very highly keeled. So we have about 6 that are in here. That's one.
Yeah, but would kind of fool you, because people would be none the wiser. You know what I mean?
Right.
It provides the same feeling of grass, essentially.
And it's functionally filling that niche that we have. So we have Carex granularis, normalis, tonza, and vulpinoidea that we planted in here.
But then you got some others that probably moved in as well?
Well, we have some that are on the periphery as well. So, we have a little bit of a slope here, and things do get wetter to the edge. And then we do have the woods over here, and things get a little more shaded. So there is a spectrum to what we have growing over here. But I have another plant that I want to show you that I think that you would like to include in your meadow, which is one of my favorites, prairie drop seed.
It's always vacillating.
So we have prairie drop seed here.
This is actually my main matrix in the meadow, is Sporobolus heterolepis. Like this is, because I like the height. I love this. It has a nice scent to it when it has with flowers, and I love the look of it.
Buttered popcorn.
Buttered popcorn
is the smell that people attribute to it, and it's wonderful. But I love the shape. It's like this gumdrop and it's got such fine texture to it. It's a tough forming warm season grass, and it really can become a dominant. This is one of the main species in the alvars that I was telling you up on the Lake Ontario.
Amazing.
And so that, again, is part of the reference site that we use.
I feel like my intuition then is correct, because this is going to be our main matrix. This is going to be what's going to connect and gel the meadow together, and I too really love it. Now, you did mention something just now that I want to point out. You said warm season grass, but isn't a lot of our turf is it a cool season grass? Because I feel like in the warm season, that's when it goes brown and people start throwing fertilizer at it, and they're like, what's wrong with my turf?
Yes, yeah. So, Kentucky bluegrass and fescues are the principal species in those turf conditions, and those are cool season grasses, which their growing season is really early in the year, and then they kind of go dormant and brown, and then they come back in the fall when it's cooler and wetter. Similar to a lot of the other cool season grasses, whether they're native or ornamental. The warm season grasses really pick up during the heat of the summer, and you have prairie dropseed, but we also mentioned little blue stem, Indian grass, big blue stem, switchgrass, that are these prairie species, particularly from the Midwest, are these warm season grasses, and they grow very tall. They do well at that time of the year. They would work in the meadow as well. Just have to mow them a little bit more frequently because sometimes they can get pretty tall. But this doesn't. This is pretty close to full grown, which is one of the reasons that we put it in here.
Now, in here, can you speak to the fact that is there both warm season and cool season in here, or is it just like primarily warm season grasses?
Well, the matrix that we have with the Danthonia, those are warm season grasses, and the drop seeds. The sedges aren't in that at all. So those are part of the system, and they're not, because it's only grasses that are either C3 or C4, warm season, cool season.
So I guess what's interesting is that, like, I was not here during early in the season, but you see your grass, it's pretty much green once it comes out of the snow, like the cool season turf grass. But what does this look like when it's coming out of the snow? Is it pretty barren? And when does it actually start picking up green? Just so people's expectations are actually met. Because I'm thinking if this is a warm season during the height of the summer, when you think that your turf is looking dead, this will actually be still looking green?
Right. So I like to look at it as just, it's not either brown or green, right? It's all kinds of different shades of that. And if you look at, even the grasses that we have in here are a different color than the sedges. A lot of the sedges that stand out here as being brighter.
Yeah, very good point.
Lime green as well. But the colors in the fall are breathtaking.
Unbelievable.
So whereas you just have a basic green lawn, so the spring is a little less attractive, if you will, before it greens up, but there are a lot of other things in here other than the grasses.
Yeah, and I think that you're making a great point of developing a subtlety of appreciation. And I see the blue stems, like, they really do have a little bluish hue in the distance, and you start to pick up the subtleties and appreciate that as far as beauty goes in a different kind of way. There is the uniformity of the turf lawn, and I get it, I understand. That might look good against a very wild garden bed, but then there's something really gorgeous about this in a different kind of way. It's a different kind of beauty, I guess.
It is, and the gap that we saw where people were really starting to like to have native plants in their landscapes, in their backyards. Native trees, they're great for the birds and the insects, shrubs, wildflowers, but then here's this edge with this completely different, sterile, turf grass environment. And it's high maintenance to try to keep the things from mingling, if you will.
And especially if you want to keep the dandelions out and everything.
Yeah,
you're really working hard.
Here it gradates over to a woodland shrub, wildflower plant community, and that edge can kind of move back and forth, and you don't have to have as much maintenance. So the idea, part of the idea here was to create a lower maintenance long term. So it requires more effort on the front end. But then the more it develops, year after year, the amount of effort and time it takes to maintain it goes down significantly, and the benefit and the value that it provides to the entire environment goes up exponentially.
What are some of the things that you might say to folks who are a little bit more concerned with a slightly higher turf, and they're in tick country?
Well, we have ticks all over the place, so it depends wherever you go, you might find them, whether it's in your yard or not. But I do hear you. It is a significant concern. My main solution to tick reduction is to reduce deer populations. But you do have to be careful wherever you are. Part of the getting ticks on you is often walking through taller vegetation, so you do have the ability to manage the vegetation height in here in relation to that, to try to meet some of your objectives.
And I think some of the things that we're thinking of from a clever point of view, I guess, is that we want to keep most of the lawn, unmowed, but we could always mow paths in the lawn, and that actually provides some really interesting ways to see the land. And you see at Cornell, like the different paths that people choose to walk, shortest from A to B. If we could actually do that, then you're not in the slightly higher grass area, so you reduce your possible.
Sure.
That's also beneficial from not disturbing the soil and the grass that grows there, right?
Yeah, like exactly. If you have the opuntia.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I accidentally stepped on one because I felt something under my feet.
It was a little squishy.
But yeah, it does prevent you having paths. It does prevent you from having that.
I want to hear from you, like, what were the things that you thought would work and then didn't for some reason?
Yeah.
And why do you think that was the case?
So there were two plants that we were really keen on having, and they established early on, but have winked out since then. And one of them is bluets, which is this beautiful
flower,
little diminutive cushion-like plant, really attractive. And we had several patches of it, and it disappeared. We don't have it now. We don't quite know how, but doing.
You think it was not like just like a little succession issue? Or?
Doing some of these projects is an experiment, right? And it's not always a controlled experiment, so you don't always know kind of the outcomes. But we did have that wink out, which was unfortunate, and it definitely could be competition. You know, the kinds of places that we've seen it grow before might not be overtopped by other plants, and so that certainly is a possibility. The other one that we had and winked out is the moss phlox, which is also a really beautiful, attractive. And
is
it's
it like
native.
a subulata? Subulata?
And it's native, although they've done lots of cultivars for it in lots of different places. But we did have several patches of that out here, and it also kind of winked out. It might be the same thing, and but you put in. Often, a few other things as an experiment, just to see and then learn from them and carry them forward the next time you do something. And you guys will be doing that in your project as well.
A living laboratory, that's what we call it. Every day it's a living laboratory. And like you said, what works like the first year and you're like excited about it, 2-3 years down the road, it may be very different. Yeah,
and I mentioned we did this over several different years. And, we were wondering if we would see differences across those years because not every year is the same. Just for one, the precipitation can be different, and that could drive a lot of what succeeds or not.
Yeah, that's a great question because we had a drought last year, right?
Yeah,
so how did that...
and 2016 as well.
Yeah.
But if you walk across the site, it looks pretty similar from one spot to another. There are a few places there's a little bit different in terms of the abundance and composition, but you really can't tell from the different methods that we've tried over the years that there's anything really significantly different.
Yeah. And I know this is like one of the things that people are letting grow, Asclepius, for the monarchs.
Well, so the site drains down towards this area here, and so it is a little bit wetter, so we decided, this would be a little bit of a different planting.
Yeah.
But again, because of the pollinator habitat, the monarch conservation concerns with its population dropping, and this is actually one of the most popular pollinator plants, period.
Yeah.
So having lots of this is really beneficial, and it's attractive.
It is, it absolutely is.
The flowers are just absolutely remarkable on them.
Mean, I love the smell actually too. It's got a nice subtle scent. Houseplant owners will probably see some familiarity with the Hoyas, which is in the same family, and they have that umbelliferous flower. So that's one of the things when you start to see plants or cultivate plants outdoors, you can make connection for those of us who have only grown houseplants. Start to see connections and have that kind of appreciation as well.
Yeah, so one of the ways that I like the philosophy behind managing some of these areas is that you do allow things to grow spontaneously. And then the things that are really problematic, you remove them by subtraction. So, about a third of the vegetation that we're looking at in this native lawn has grown spontaneously coming in from the surrounding area. And that's perfectly fine. You know, we're happy to have that. It makes it that much more interesting, that much more diverse as well.
What were some of the spontaneous ones that surprised you and that you were happy about?
Well, the wood aster for one, because we think about it growing in a woodland.
Yeah.
And here it is growing in, you know, full sun in a drought is one of the ones I would say is probably for me, the largest surprise.
That's great. I mean, I think this is absolutely wonderful. This gives us so much food for thought. It also puts like more seeds on my consideration list. And I really love that you, you know, suggested things when thinking about like our site of like kind of really dry and gravelly and everything, you know, what would actually work best, like based on your, you know, experience here. I mean, it's just so invaluable. Thank you so much, Todd, for this just alternative view for growing a lawn. I feel so thankful because this is just not, it's the unpopular choice at this point, and you just have to wait until people wake up to it and say, hey, you know, this is a possibility and I could do this too.
Absolutely.
If you haven't heard yet, we'll be donating and investing 10% of our YouTube AdSense revenue from this channel back into the Finger Lakes community. We're so thankful that Espoma, our partners across both the Plant One On Me and Flock Finger Lakes channels, will be matching those funds this year, as well as through a combination of monies and or products, depending on the project. So just know that by watching these videos, you're helping the community here.